And now it's time to welcome back Rob Lees from Mortgage Choice Blue Mountains and Penrith for our weekly finance segment. And today we're going to be discussing bridging finance.
Rob, can you explain to our listeners what is bridging finance and in what circumstances is this kind of finance arrangement required?
Yeah, it's required in a situation where someone wants to upgrade to another property. So, how do you finance a new purchase when you've still got a loan on your current property? So it's a common problem that most people face at some point in their lives. Most people will buy a basic home to begin with, and then they want to upgrade because the family's enlarging, and we've got to work out a way to finance that new debt. And particularly it occurs if you found a property that you've just got to have and you haven't yet sold your property, the one that you're living in at the moment.
But am I right in saying that bridging finance obviously comes with a cost associated with it?
Sure.
It's not inexpensive.
Yeah, well, it's the way it's structured, and I suppose it's the interest. There's different products available on the market, but generally the risk is probably more that the interest can be capitalised. So there is a period in a bridging loan that has the peak debt, and that's the expensive period, and then obviously when you've sold your home, there's an end debt, and then it goes down. But during that bridging period, it can be very expensive because the loan will be a lot higher. So you want to minimise that period.
Okay. Is there any more about how the loan products actually work that you can enlighten us?
Yeah, look, if you imagine it like this, let's imagine there's a customer or a family. They live in a property that's worth $400,000, and they have a loan of $100,000 on that property at the moment. They've been out on the weekend and they've found their dream home. It's selling for $600,000. So they'll need to finance that $600,000 plus the stamp duty and legals. Let's say that's $30,000. They'll need a loan for $630,000 on top of the $100,000 they already owe. So they'll need a loan of they'll need to qualify for a loan of $730,000. They talk to their mortgage broker on the weekend, and I say, sorry, you don't qualify. You don't earn enough income to qualify for a loan of $730,000. That's why we might look at the bridging option. So some lenders still qualify the loan on that peak debt of $730,000, but there's some lenders that qualified on the end debt. Now the end debt would be if they sold their property for $400,000 and they owe $100,000, that's $300,000 in net proceeds. So it would come down. The end debt would end up being around about $430,000. So it'll come down from $730,000 to $430,000, and that makes it a little easier to qualify. But as you're saying, Diane, the risk is that in that bridging period, interest with these products can be added on to the loan, and it's capitalised, so you don't want that bridging period to be very long.
Yeah, it's really just to hold that gap between
and
when you buy and when you sell the house you already own.
So it might only be 2 to 3 weeks that you actually have that peak debt, but it allows you to actually secure that property before you've sold the property you're in now.
So if the home doesn't sell,
that's one of the risks.
And well, that's right. Yeah. But then you drop the price for a quicker sale.
Absolutely.
But then of course your
net debt
is increasing.
That's right. Yeah. I guess what the bridging loan does is it does give you choices there, and that you can wait a little bit but not too long to get the best price. But in this market, you're going to get a sale, and it's all about price.
All right, well, let's take a break. We'll come back and talk more about bridging finance with Rob in just a minute. But let's play a bit more music. And here's the absolute Motown classic, one of my, I think, all-time favourites from Miss Diana Ross. You have to refer to her as Miss Diana Ross because that's what she asks. Ain't No Mountain High Enough. And you've been listening to Miss Diana Ross, Ain't No Mountain High Enough. And we're back with Rob Lees. Rob, we've kind of touched on some of the pros and cons of these products, bridging finance products, but could you talk in a little bit more detail? What are some of the advantages and disadvantages associated with it?
Well, there's really only one advantage, and it's just that it gives you the choice of buying the property that you have to have before you've sold your property. That's really the only advantage. But on the downside, I guess these are the risks. The risk is that you won't be able to sell your property. I think that's unlikely in this kind of market, or that you won't get the best price for your property. You don't want to have the bridging for a long period. That's a negative, because you're going to be capitalising the interest, and I guess that the cost of it is an issue there. So that it is a little bit of cost there, but if you only have that bridging period for a short time, it's probably not such a bad thing to give you the choices that you want to really have.
I wonder if it'd be worth too, doing the figures on, selling your house first, going into a rented place, and then purchasing. I mean, obviously,
Yes.
if you found the place that you want, and you've got to get it before somebody else does, you need bridging finance. But I wonder how the dollar figure would stack up against the hassle of the double move and the expenses that you'd incur there.
Yeah, well, that's our next question. We're going to look at other alternatives if you can't, but that's okay. It's
All right, Rob. Are there any alternative?
Yes.
Are there any alternative loan
Thanks for
structures
asking.
to bridging finance if you're planning to upgrade or downsize to another property?
And actually, that's one of them, the one that you just mentioned then. But it's more common that most people don't qualify for bridging finance, and most of the discussions I have with people, a lot of people are trying to work out how to pull this off. So there's a lot of discussions I have with people, and most of the time they don't qualify for bridging because at the peak debt level, the percentage borrowed can't go over 80%. So you've got to have a reasonable amount of equity in your property to be able to do it. So most people actually don't have that option. So there's got to be alternatives. So one of those alternatives, as you suggested, so you're really with me on this, aren't you? Is why don't you just sell your property first and rent for a while?
Go into a short-term rental scenario.
Yeah, that's right. And then take your time to look around. So that's one alternative. So there's some people that will do that, and they're big decisions, and I'm aware of that when I'm talking to people. These are major changes for families. That's one alternative. The other alternative is to try and pull off a simultaneous settlement, and that is where you would find the property that you want to buy. You really need to have your property ready to list as soon as you've found your property, and you might try and negotiate a delayed settlement of about 8 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks, and then you put your property on the market. You try to get a quick sale so that the purchase and the sale happen simultaneoally.
That's probably the best option of them all.
It is, but it's hard to line that up. It's not that easy. So a lot of the time when people might be shooting for that, they're not able to pull it off.
I'm going to ask you, you might not be able to, but look, if you took bridging finance out, say, for 3 to 4 weeks on a $700,000 mortgage loan, what sort of costs are you likely to incur?
It's not going to be that much more. So let's say whatever the difference is in the peak debt, let's say in our little example before of about $300,000 at 5%, 3 5's 15. That's $15,000 a year. Divide by 12 months. It's probably a bit over $1,000 if you held it for a month. So it's not that expensive if the bridging period isn't that long. There is one other alternative too, and I call this a pseudo bridging structure, where you might actually buy the new property in the short term as an investment property, and we factor in rental income and all that kind of thing, and that's the backup plan. And then when you've sold your property, then you move into that property. So that's another way to structure it, and there's another alternative. But again, you could have the peak debt for a longer period, but it's another alternative in trying to pull this.
Yeah, a good idea. If you can get people into rent, you're at least
that's right. So it
and
mitigates a bit of the risk if you can't sell your property.
Indeed. All right, Rob. Well, thank you again for joining us on the show. That's Rob Lees from Mortgage Choice, Blue Mountains and Penrith, and of course you can contact them on 4739 9749. Or visit Rob at the office at 3/13 Hope Street in Blaxland, and we'll see you again next week, Rob.